I want to welcome all of our folks who are calling in from around the nation, including some companies that we've worked with recently. Polypeptide, I want to give a shout out to some of the folks over there, City of Hope, and also to our MedTech and Biotech Veterans Program. Thanks so much for being a part of this webinar today. It's a great topic. It's on workplace etiquette. There are a lot of things that people just don't tell you about, and you need to know before you go into the workplace or when you're there, if you're going to be promoted to a greater scope of role and responsibility, just what is it are you supposed to do in certain situations. Obviously, we can't cover everything, but there have been about 3 questions that I've received over the years that just keep popping up again and again and again, and I want to take a moment to go over each of these and then allow some time for you at the end of this session to ask questions that you may have. So on the note of logistics, be sure you type in those questions on your screen. My wonderful sidekick, Stephen, is going to capture all of that for us, and we'll be able to get to it at the end of the session. Okay, let's just jump into these 3 questions. How should I dress? Do I say yes, sir, no, ma'am, Mr., Ms., doctor? What's expected of me when I attend a meeting? We're going to take a look at each of these and break them down into detail, so just hang in there with me. You're going to want to take some notes, but also know that we'll archive this webinar and you can take a look at it later on if you want to. How should I dress? Comes up so often, and it's important, so I'll spend the majority of my time on this one because it all comes down to first impression. I mean, appearance really matters, doesn't it? People make snap decisions and judgments about you before you even open your mouth, which is why it pays to really spend some time on hygiene and attire in order to be able to be perceived as that professional that you want to be perceived at as you're coming across to other people. Everything matters, and perhaps by way of trivia in terms of a question, this helps make that point even more sound for all of you. 55% of another person's perception is based on how you look. It's very true. And so those first impressions you don't get back. It's all based on how you come across. If it's a new client, a new customer, if it's a senior manager, if it's the first time into a particular workplace setting, all of these things matter. People will perceive you. Your appearance is the first thing that they see, and that forms the basis of that perception. It obviously impacts how others are going to view you. It's a fun slide that you're looking at right now, which is an image cycle that helps make this point a little bit more academically, if you will. How we see ourselves, which is the purple box at the top of the screen, influences how we dress and groom ourselves. So let's just take a moment and pause on that particular note. If we see ourselves as being exhausted, worn out, an underachiever, not very successful, all of that is adopted in the way that we not only conduct ourselves, our mannerisms, the way that we speak to other people, but certainly in our attire and in our hygiene. You all have known people where they were depressed, and I'm making a point here so it's an extreme, so severe depression, and you know what they end up looking like as a result of how they feel. Well, even when you take that up several notches, you're not depressed, but maybe you're just feeling a little low or not feeling as though you're on top of your game. All of that's going to have its penetration, if you will, in the way that you come across physically in appearance. How we dress and groom ourselves influences how we think, feel, and act or react to others, which influences how others see us and react or respond. So it is this cycle that continues to go around. All the more reason to pay attention to how you're grooming yourself, how you're coming across, because that kind of workplace etiquette is just something that's expected. It's an undercurrent. It's just never talked about. But I will tell you, it will make or break your reputation. So let's see what we mean by this. Studies have shown that when you look good on the outside, you're more likely to succeed. And remember, there's something important about this looking good on the outside. So even if you don't feel great on the inside, It is a matter of appearance. It's a matter of behavior. That's what other people see and respond to. They don't have the ability to get inside of our heads or inside of our stomachs to know what it is we're feeling or thinking, but they certainly are taking a long, hard look at how we're coming across. As we take a look then at breaking this down into what that means in everyday situations by way of etiquette and grooming and interaction, then in business climates that are more traditional in nature, it's worth noting that the expectations are fairly precise. This really has a lot to do with those kinds of companies that are more traditional, as I mentioned. They've been around for a long time. We call them the brick and the mortar. Pharmaceutical companies are an example. Financial institutions, another example. Academic research institutes at a high level when you're interacting with other people. There are some precise expectations, and so it's worth making note of some of these more corporate expectations when you're thinking about how it is you're supposed to project an image so that the etiquette, your conduct, follows and in turn actually suggests to other people how they should look at you and treat you in response. There's a strong business case for appropriate clothing, and you can see on the screen that you've got a man dressed nicely in a suit, tie. He's got clean, scuff-free shoes. Likewise, you've got a woman who's dressed in a suit. The skirt is tailored, the jacket is tailored. It comes down to about knee length, appropriate heel. Her hair is out of her eyes. She's not over-accessorized in terms of jewelry. And obviously that first impression is going to be more spectacular than if either one of them had come dressed sloppily, dangly jewelry, high stiletto heels, just kind of maybe a polo shirt that was untucked. And so you can see how the clothing really sets the stage. The images that you're looking at now on the screen are a little bit extreme in terms of what most people would end up doing, but enough of it to say that on the left side, you don't want to come across as trying to assert your personality style. You really believe that your hair is your own and this is how you're going to really make a difference and you're going to send a message. In a traditional, more conservative environment, you don't send messages at the beginning of introduction if you really want to be able to be taken seriously. It's not about you, the individual, as much as it's about the team, it's about the organization, it's about you being a supportive role. And so people will look at you not to be a disruptor as much as they will look at you to not necessarily conform, but they want to make sure you're not going to be the distraction to the business that needs to be done. And I think that's a better and more truthful way of looking at it. This isn't about having to blend in with everybody, but it is about being taken seriously when it comes to your talent, your knowledge, your expertise, your skill set. Let's move on to some others. Obviously extremes here as well, but men in a corporate environment where the culture is more formal and more precise, it's black or brown lace-ups. Or a Cordova, which is like a burgundy color. I think that that's acceptable too. It's not wearing clogs, it's not wearing tennis shoes, it's not really even wearing loafers. It is a matter of wearing something that's of a higher quality. And it means polishing those shoes and making sure they're free of scuff marks. And so those are important things to note. Women, when you're in a traditional conservative environment and the corporate culture is one that's very polished, then you want to go for a polished look. And obviously that comes down to having jackets as well as skirts or slacks, blouses that are not too form-fitting. Obviously on the right, you're going to be taken more seriously than on the left. You look like you're just going to a high school football game later on and then, just hanging out with your friends. So to be taken seriously in those kinds of environments, you do have to dress in a way that's going to be less of a distraction and more of an appropriate etiquette so that people can engage you and interact with you as you intend for them to do. Likewise, women, watch your hair and bangs. Is it constantly in your eyes? Are you having to do this all the time? Or is it pulled back? Is it off your face? Is it cleanly trimmed? Does it look kind of scraggly? Those are things that you want to pay attention to. If you're going to wear it up in a ponytail, then just make sure you don't look like a schoolgirl. Again, you're going for a professional look. And all of this sets the stage for you to be able to interact on a more reasonable level. And I'll be redundant throughout this whole thing. You need to be taken seriously. So what's your credibility threshold, and how are people going to respect you if at first glance you look more like a fashion model than you do like a professional who has something in terms of service, knowledge, expertise that's being contributed. Men, obviously I don't think anybody's going to show up with spiked hair and red. If you were thinking of that, then don't. Again, we're talking about a conservative environment. But I also want to speak to older generations. It's important, any generation, it's important to make sure that your eyeglass wear, if you are wearing glasses, is up to date, is contemporary. You don't want to, especially if you're older, date yourself with old glasses only to make yourself look as though you are an older worker, which can raise flags for some people, where they may not take you as seriously as somebody who's on the cutting edge of technology or science. So think about those things. Also, men, if you're going to wear facial hair, I know the 5 o'clock shadow is in right now, just make sure it looks well trimmed and is well kept, and doesn't look as though, you're just going for a scruffy, I didn't want to shave look. Mustaches, goatees should be very well trimmed. Hair should be trimmed. Again, your clothing should be current and contemporary. I think there's a lot of versatility right now in terms of fashion for colors and ties, even in socks or in some shirts. So you do have some room to kind of play around and try some things on to see what kind of look is going to give you that persona of somebody who knows what they're talking about. And from an etiquette perspective, then we'll be granted a ticket for admission to speak with people in upper management, to speak with clients, to be able to interact with other people in the workplace. Ladies, fix your face. If in doubt, just really tone it down, be more conservative, more modest. Avoid heavy eyeshadows, false eyelashes that go out to here. Watch nail color as well, neon colors, black gothic colors, not necessarily perceived in the same way that you may perceive them in institutions that are more traditional again, where you have a baby boomer population that's in management. They would tend to frown on lots of heavy, again, almost model-like makeup. And this goes to everybody, regardless of the corporate culture that you're in. You need to trim your nails. I can't tell you how many times I've met with people and am distracted because I go to shake their hands and I get cut a little bit because they've got jagged nails. And worse, you're shaking hands and you look down and their nails are dirty. So you got to pay attention to this kind of stuff. Even if, and in a moment we'll flip over to business casual, even if that environment is so laid back, as we like to say in California, you still want to make sure that you are not distracting people from knowing the brilliance inside of your head. You need to be sure that your hygiene and your dress is coming across in a very professional, well-kept manner. Accessorizing is also important. Not too many men are going to use briefcases or portfolios like this, but you probably will have a tablet and maybe even a notebook. So be sure that you carry that with you and you've got something that you can carry. And this is true for women as well. So whatever carrying bag you're using, or even if it's just the tablet in a cover, make sure when you open up that tablet cover, it's neat you don't have your any of your credit cards or other cards falling out from that, and you want to make sure that you've got some paper and a writing pen. You'll note that there's a little bit of a pendulum push back to everyone carrying tablets into meetings. Even the CEO of Yahoo was noted on the art of the notebook and being able to take notes again when meeting with other people. And I'm finding that to be more of an etiquette rule that we're seeing often now in the workplace. And I'll show and demonstrate more about what I mean along those lines in just a moment. Guys or gals, if you have tats and you are working in a traditional environment, you want to avoid showcasing those. They're very personal, and some of the artwork is beautiful, no doubt about it. But again, you want to make sure that the message of the business gets across versus your own personality, your strong personality or belief statements that are being made. So err on the side of, long sleeve shirts. Obviously, if you've got, arm tattoos, women, this is true for you. And then as certain settings permit, then, you have more of an opportunity to share that. I've never seen hats work in the workplace. It's just not something that we do unless it's in winter. And you just need to wear the hat until you get inside the door. But fedoras, unless you're outside walking, not in the workplace. Sunglasses, never. I don't care what setting it is. Unless you're mafia, I guess it's appropriate. But other than that, there's no place for sunglasses in the work environment. It's for when you leave the building and you put them on at that point. Women, a silly illustration on the left, and obviously you're not going to do that, but it does come close to some people I've actually seen who accessorize so much with their jewelry, it is a riot and a half. People walk in, they've got jewelry, earrings that are dangling, strand upon strand of necklace, dangly bracelets, so that when they walk, they sound like they are their own little bell choir. And so you want to do less is more in these environments. And also, if you're wearing glasses, make sure, women, that your glasses are updated. On the picture on the right, hair is pulled back. There are small earrings, very little minimal jewelry, and accessorizing that way. And so again, if you're not sure, ask somebody from an older generation and a younger generation to be able to give you some of their input so that you have a better idea of how you're coming across to those people that you're working with. Every generation is going to have a different viewpoint. Go easy on the fragrance. In etiquette terms, we have to be really careful in the workplace right now because of the really unbelievable number of allergies that are popping up around us, and a lot of it has to do with scent. And it could be the way that colognes and perfumes are made in terms of chemistry compared to how they used to be made. But when you're in close surroundings, especially a cubicle environment, or you're working on the bench, you're in a lab environment, you want to be easy on the fragrance because too much is just too much. And I want you to kind of think along those terms. So again, more traditional environments, less is more. Pay attention to the corporate environment. If this is a new workplace for you, then what you can do is go sit in the parking lot without looking like a stalker and observe the people coming in and going out of the building. How are they dressed? And you want to aim for just a little bit of a notch above the average, not flashy, not too much above, but if you're looking to make a professional impression because you're new, or you're looking to increase your role and responsibility, then you want to dress and purport yourself a notch above everybody else. You'll see the quote on the accompanying slide here, where the most basic mistake new employees make is underdressing. And I've found that to be true with people we've hired, also with people that I've seen who've onboarded with organizations, and you don't want to be one of them. So if unsure, dress conservatively. The best way to avoid a problem is to really understand the corporate culture, which is why it's good to kind of watch people in that particular company. Again, get help from significant others, friends, family who have good taste, who can help you pick out your wardrobe ahead of time. I want to switch now and spend a little bit more time on business casual, because the majority of our workplaces now, especially in life sciences, on the biotech side, biofuels side, telemedicine, digital health, so technology is moving into the forefront of the biotechs. It's bringing it down to a more casual and more informal workplace. And obviously, the younger the generations working in the workplace, we're seeing this sort of take hold across organizations, whether it's East Coast or West Coast as well. So these environments are going to be less formal. But it's really important to talk about what business casual means, because, again, people think that the shirt they wore yesterday or last night that has wrinkles and stains is perfectly fine to wear the following morning to work, and it's not. Business casual is not permission to look like a slob or to wear something that you watch a football game in with a football game with the guys, or where you're working in the garden or you're cleaning your car out. That's not business casual at all. So you need to pay attention. And these examples on the screen really help point in that direction. So guys, khaki slacks, dress jeans, absolutely appropriate. Make sure you've got clean ones. Make sure that the hemline is appropriate and fits just above the top of the shoe. It brushes that in just a little bit below, right at that heel mark behind, so that when you sit down, they don't see leg above the sock line. Make sure you've got a belt that doesn't have tears in it. If you are going to tuck your shirt in, then you want to make sure your belt is nice. Tailored shirts are great, dress shirts, polo shirts are fine. Some t-shirts are fine as well. We'll take a look in just a moment at another one. There's certain t-shirts, though, that you obviously are going to want to avoid. Women, dress slacks, dress capris, skirts, dresses, all fine. The jewelry is appropriate, as you see there, a button-up blouse, or a casual jacket over a blouse, or a tailored tee that fits appropriately. All of these are good examples. More good examples. Guys, you don't have to tuck shirts in. Dress shirts, button-ups, nice. You can roll the sleeves back, absolutely appropriate. Just make sure that these are clean, decent shirts, and that your slacks fit you, and that's the same holds true for women. Again, women, nothing too form-fitting for you, and sleeveless shirts could be okay in some settings, but even in some informal settings, sleeveless shirts for women aren't acceptable. So you may want to just have like a sweater or a casual jacket that you want to throw over your shoulders. I've never seen tank tops permissible in any kind of a setting, so avoid that. It looks like you're going to the beach. Again, it's about the perception that you want people to have of you. And in terms of etiquette, in terms of what to do or not to do, these are some helpful suggestions that you may want to pay attention to. Here's your cheat sheet, guys. Neatly pressed dress khakis or dress jeans, pressed cotton long sleeve button-down shirt. Again, the caveat is pressed. A lot of the materials today are great. You can put it in the dryer, and then before it dries all the way, don't throw in your jeans with your dress shirts, but take it out and then just hang it, and it should have most of the wrinkles out. Relaxed shoes, leather, canvas, fashionable pullover sweater. Women, your cheat sheet skirt, not too short. You can wear a dress, sports slacks, a blouse, jacket, sweater, slip-on loafers, heels that are appropriate. Please don't do this, guys. Don't think that the shirt in your closet that you wore 2 years ago, 5 years ago, is just your awesome shirt that you got compliments on then still applies for today. May not fit you appropriately, may have been worn too much. Please don't do that. I've actually worked with people like that, and I have to tell you, it sends the wrong message altogether. Do what's on the right-hand side of the screen. You want to do that instead. You can tuck in your shirt. You can leave a long sleeve button down untucked if the culture allows for that. Roll up your sleeves. You'll notice the shoes are tie-ups and suede. Those are fine too. It's a great perspective. It's a great way to come across. Again, do's on the left-hand side versus don'ts on the right-hand side here. If you're in life sciences, oftentimes you'll be interacting with different departments and oftentimes with customers and clients. Again, it will depend on your function, your job function, your title, and the company that you're working in. But when you are on site in your company, what's business casual for you, as on the left-hand side here, could be very, very appropriate. Just keep in mind that if it's a business casual environment for a client or a customer, if you're in sales or marketing, you probably want to dress up a bit because you may not be really familiar with what their unspoken rule is for appropriate work attire. So just kind of keep that in mind. Guys, gals, if you've lost a lot of weight and want to show off your big girl pants or big boy pants and then how they don't fit anymore and they're all baggy, don't. Please don't wear baggy clothes. Don't wear t-shirts that are meant for just casual play or casual wear. Business casual does not mean play attire. So pay attention to those things. Also, on this note, don't wear t-shirts with graphics on them on the back, even if it's in small print. I love beer, or a favorite music rock band. You don't need to promote anything along those lines. On the left-hand side of the screen, he's wearing a Tailor t-shirt underneath this. Those are appropriate knitted tops to wear. T-shirts that are 100% cotton that end up baggy after just about an hour of wearing them are not appropriate, even for business casual, unless it's super, super casual and, and that's just the way the environment is. Do's and don'ts, I don't care how comfortable those shoes are. You don't wear flip-flops, you don't wear clogs, you don't wear mules. You want to wear something that is going to be more appropriate until you're really super familiar. And even then, if you want to be taken seriously and you want that increased scope of bandwidth when it comes to job function, and you want to be able to interface with senior management or interface with your clients and customers, you got to take it up a notch so that you don't look like you're only permitted to work out of a closet down the hall in the company. Ladies, do on the left side. Again, you don't have to wear a tailored suit. White blouses are great in business casual, great in corporate, very universal. You can wear any kind of blouse, dress slacks, or even more casual business slacks, very appropriate. You'll notice the heel is very low on the left-hand side. Right-hand side, you're not working at Hooters, and you're not going out for cocktails at a bar. So no short skirts, no tight-fitting t-shirts, no super high heels or even high heels. Well, high heels if it's about 2 to 3 inches, but more than that is not really considered appropriate. So on the left, super high 5-inch heels, wedge style, open toe, absolutely not appropriate, no matter if it's traditional or if it's a casual work environment. You want to err on the side of a lower 2 to 3 inch heel is appropriate. Closed toe, important in life sciences where there's a production floor. Even if you're not working on the production floor, you're working in the offices part, you may have to go back to a production floor. And in just about every manufacturing area that I know of, they don't allow open toes. So be very careful about the shoes that you wear. You can spruce it up, go wild on the color, that's okay. On the shoe, just make sure the style of the shoe tends to be a little bit more conservative. Do's and don'ts, again, being redundant, do dress more conservatively, dress it down. Unless you're working in a model agency, you want to kind of stay away from the really avant-garde stuff until you're really familiar with the corporate culture, and then use your judgment as to what you want to wear or not wear. And we're huge advocates of buying within your budget. Do not, even if you're working full-time with a great salary, don't overspend. I mean, buy within your budget. Don't break the bank just to be able to have certain clothes. You can get some really amazing finds at discount stores. They're everywhere. Just look for how they're made. And someone even suggested if you buy a great jacket, and maybe that costs a little bit more, the blouse doesn't have to be very spendy, or the dress underneath that jacket. Guys, maybe spend more on a jacket as well, and maybe not so much on that shirt that goes underneath it. So buy within your budget. Take people with you who have good taste. That always helps. If you buy something on a budget that's at a discount store, but it's a little boxy, spend a few extra dollars to get it tailored and appropriate at the shoulders. Make sure it comes in at the waistline. Make sure the hem on the skirt, the dress, or the slacks are appropriate. So all good things to keep in mind. And when in doubt, sit down. And even if you're not in doubt, sit down and then stand up and look at a full-length mirror to see what's going on behind you. Guys, when you sit down, do your socks show? And if so, do they match? What color? How much leg is showing? What do your shoes look like? Is it bunching at the waist? Is it bunching at the shirt? How does it fit through the shoulders if you lean or sit back? Women, it's a great test for the length of a dress or a skirt. How far up does it ride? You need to pay attention to those kinds of things. Also, you'll be able to see about your shoes as well. And then turn around and look on the back side. You'll catch yourself walking out the door. In some cases, if you don't look and you just bought this jacket and the vents still have the threads in it to keep it together when it's being sold. So you want to make sure those threads are cut so that when you walk out the door, you're not dripping tags and other giveaways that you just bought this outfit. I'm now going to move to another question. So thanks for staying with me for all of that. There was a lot on appearance, but again, when you move around in circles, the first thing people see is you. They don't hear what comes out of your mouth. They just kind of see you. So you spend more time on appearance than you do on, I think, anything else when it comes to that workplace etiquette. The behavior will help reinforce the appearance once you have that down. So let's move a little bit to the behavior now, and it comes often in questions. I know our MedTech Biotech Veterans Program, military vets in transition ask me this all the time. Do I say yes, sir? Do I say no, ma'am? It was ingrained in me. It's a sign of respect, and I get it. I adore it. I love it. I'm all about it, and think that it's wonderful. However, in the workplace, in terms of etiquette, we, for the most part, are on a first-name basis. And the majority of companies who've adopted an informal method of greeting use their first names. So I want you to get into the habit of saying, thanks, John, or Mary, I'll get right on top of that. No, I wasn't thinking of doing that just now, but I certainly will take this to heart. So thanks again, Mary or John. You're going to have to practice saying that. Even with upper management, you will have to practice that. Now, there are some, having said all of that, there are some situations in some companies where everybody is required to use a Mr. or a Ms. or a doctor when addressing other people. And people who come from different cultures other than the U.S. Often ask that question as well. Do I say Mr. Smith because he's in upper management, Ms. Jones, someone I'm meeting for the first time? Do I always say Dr. Sorensen? What is it I use in terms of a greeting? It all comes down to the corporate culture. So again, follow the cues, listen carefully to how people are greeting and meeting one another. If you're in doubt, err on the side of formality, especially when you're meeting someone of distinction or a client, or you're in a different setting, meeting somebody for the first time, unless informality has already been part of that interaction. just use a more formal greeting, Mr., Ms., Dr. so-and-so, and I think that will help. So again, veterans, start to weave out the yes sir, the no ma'ams, the yes ma'ams, the no sirs. Weave those out and start replacing them with first names. You can practice saying this in your car as you're driving to and from places. Others who come from different cultures, again, you're going to want to pay very close attention to the setting and the people around you as to how they're interacting. So think about that in terms of etiquette. It's always great, if you're in doubt, again, let me just be super uber redundant. If in doubt, always err on the side of formality, and then people will correct you and say, oh my gosh, call me by my first name. Call me Victoria. You don't need to say Ms. Tucker. All right. There you have it on that. Now, meetings is another one. Meetings is another question I get about, and then a whole myriad of questions underneath that topic header of what's expected of me when I attend a meeting. So let's go through some of these things, because etiquette depends on the kind of meeting you're attending. And there are 8 types, and you probably don't even know this, but there's a kickoff meeting, informational, status review, motivational, persuasive, brainstorming, decision-making, facilitative, crisis management. So there are 8 basic types of meetings. One of the things to do is to be sure that you look at the Say It Smart in Meetings course in the Life Collaborative catalog and library. Look that up, go through that, understand what's required and what happens at each of these meeting settings. That's going to help clue you in quite a bit more in terms of your own interaction and etiquette. Out of the 8, there are 4 that are actually the top, and we see these all the time. There's a project kickoff, status, brainstorming, decision-making. You'll probably be invited to those on a more repetitive basis than some of the other ones. So again, in terms of really being able to engage well, you need to understand what each of these types of meetings does. And I'm going to leave that to you because the course is pretty robust and sufficient in walking you through those 8 types and exploring in more detail what you should and should not be doing when it comes to that. Generally speaking, there are some do's and don'ts for every meeting that you are going to attend, and certainly those you're going to host and hold. Prior to a meeting, again, people will not tell you this, but it is expected. So learn this from an etiquette perspective. You want to review the agenda. It's going to jumpstart thinking so that you can come prepared and ready to engage others. Likewise, if you're holding a meeting, send that out. That's the etiquette. Send out an agenda so people know what the topics are, and you can keep everybody on the same page during that meeting. And there are people who think internally just need more processing time. You may be one of them. That's why you need to do this before you just show up. If there's no agenda, you need to hunt it down. Find the person who's holding the meeting, calling the meeting, and just ask them. Even if it's a small one-on-one meeting. It might be just on the phone. Sally, thanks. I know we're meeting at 2 o'clock this afternoon, but I wanted to check in with you. What is it we're going to be talking about? I just want to come prepared. Or we're going to be meeting with the team next Tuesday. I didn't see an agenda. Is there one? I'd really like to know the topics. It'll help me to prepare. I'm sure to do the same for the other people there. So remind other people in a gentle, non-pushy, non-dictatorial fashion that agendas are hugely helpful in terms of etiquette for business practical reasons. Big meetings, send an agenda 3 weeks in advance, sometimes even longer if people have to put it on their travel schedule. 2 months is not unheard of. 3 months is not unheard of, only because the bigger the meeting, more clients involved, external people coming from remote sites, the more you need to be aware of this. Informal meetings, send the agenda a few days in advance. People need to know a couple days in advance before they show up just what it is they need to know. And an etiquette rule of thumb is that you want to convey the key agenda points in the body of an email. Stick to the facts: who, what, when, and where. Here's an example. Note the subject header states the pertinent facts right there. This is the agenda, product line meeting next Tuesday, October 11th at 9 a.m. Heads up, don't just say next Tuesday. Sometimes people lose their emails and may not know which next Tuesday this actually relates to without doing some more looking at the dates of when the email was sent. So make sure the date goes in there. In the body of the email, white space, clean, not paragraph after paragraph, very easy to read. Everyone is so extremely busy. The majority of people that we work with now in high-speed settings, in life science and high technology, don't open attachments unless they absolutely have to. And when it comes to agendas, they'd much rather look at it in the body of the email. So you can see the pertinent facts are stated and even the key action items by way of a goal or an objective that needs to be addressed. So practice doing this and in delivering it for your own meetings, to be sure. Do prepare. Do not show up unprepared. You want to review the agenda ahead of time or create the agenda if you're holding it. You want to validate your role and responsibility prior to any meeting. Don't just assume that you will be a decision maker if you're representing your department or function. Always check in with others to see if you'll be conveying information, listening to information to convey to others, if you will be incorporating it into a project where you'll need to create some more details for project team members as a result of your attendance to the meeting. Really think carefully about your role and responsibility. Also, prior to the start of a meeting, don't just walk into the meeting and sit yourself down into a chair and get your phone out or your tablet and start working away. You need to greet people when they walk in, introduce yourself if you're not familiar with them, at least lean forward, shake hands, smile, say hi, how are you, ask them how they're doing, how their family is, how things are going. That's important because of several reasons. People hate meetings, number one. So if you're there and fairly pleasant, well, then that's always a plus. And number two, if you show up and just sit back in the meeting and are doing your own thing, you will immediately be perceived by your demeanor, your etiquette will say about you that you are apathetic, that you don't care, that you are a passive participant, and I'm not sure why I invited you to attend in the first place. So a lot can be said for prior to the start of a meeting. During the meeting, ask the open-ended who, what, why, when, how. Listen well, take notes. You should always have a pen. You should always have paper as well. And leaning forward and asking questions. Ensure you understand what's required of you. Don't just do this to the people. If you're unsure of something, you need to politely interrupt and say, could we go back a moment? I'm not sure I understand what it is my department, my team, me, what I'm being expected to do as a result of this action item you just stated. So again, you need to pay attention, obviously. That's the meeting etiquette that people are looking for. Don't wing it. Don't just show up. Anybody who's been around the workplace enough, who's smart enough in their function and their job, will call you on it, and you will end up looking really stupid, not to mention making your entire team look similarly. Don't daydream. Even though 9 out of 10 people do, you're going to have to stay awake. And a lot of that can be done by just leaning forward, both feet firmly on the floor, and then pen in hand taking notes. It will help you track the conversation. Do not monopolize discussions. This isn't all about you or your thinking energetically outside of your head. It's about being able to create a symbiotic exchange of data and information with other people. Do not review messages on your phone. Do not send text. Do not do email when you are in a meeting. You'll miss data. You'll appear again apathetic, and it's something I personally detest. So if for no other reason, humor me everybody else from my generation, when they see people who show up and they're busy on their phones, and I'm going to construe it as, well, you could care less about what I have to say. Maybe what I have to say is not all that important to you. I get that, I understand it, but you better look like it's important to you, because I'm going to be in a decision-making position. As will there be other managers or influencers who will be looking at you, your demeanor, your etiquette during the meeting, and make a decision about whether or not you're the right person for that next bump in role, responsibility, or if you're the designated member to go out and represent the organization to a client. Again, just don't do these things. Don't slouch. Don't chew gum. Don't jingle coins in your pocket. Don't fidget with your hands. Don't crack your knuckles. Don't play with your phone. Sigh, mumble, look at your watch. Lean back with your legs crossed. Arrive without paper and pen. Do not do that. Err on this side. Have the energy. Maintain great posture. Take notes. Lean forward. Make eye contact. Smile. But don't overdo it. Speak clearly. Confidence is a behavior, not a feeling. Doesn't matter what you feel on the inside. It's how you look in terms of etiquette on the outside. It's how you come across, your mannerisms, the way that you speak to other people, the way that you greet other people, your appearance. Be smart about time. Start on time, end on time. Doesn't matter what everybody else is doing. You will become known as someone who will respect individuals. Again, the bane of our existence are meetings. Just about everybody hates them. We spend more time in meetings than anywhere else. And so if you're going to hold one, you want to make sure that you're starting and ending on time. After the meeting is important too. There's an etiquette to that. Don't forget to follow up on any action items or assume that the meeting itself is proof of work. You're going to have to do some follow-up. Be sure that you're accountable for your own stuff. Be clear about what's required of you or others if you're holding the meeting, and communicate immediately when something is off track. So these are the things to think about. Okay, a lot just on 3 tiny questions, and we could have even spent more time on that, but I know that Stephen's been capturing some questions offline, so let me just throw it over to Stephen to ask a question or two here.
All right, here's a good one. What if someone I sit next to wears such a strong cologne that it nearly knocks me out?
Yeah, exactly. What are you saying? We were talking about fragrance being so powerful. It can be overwhelming. And allergic reactions are happening more and more, as I was alluding to earlier. So the thing to do is to be able to just be graciously candid, as I like to say. And in a private moment, when you don't have anybody else around you, you want to just go to that person and say, gosh, Tom, I like that cologne. It's got a great scent, but I have to say it's pretty overpowering. Could you just kind of just take it down just a little bit? And people will get that. You don't want to embarrass somebody. You also don't want to suffocate as a result of it. So it's one-on-one, kind of a private setting. You don't need to embarrass them. Now, having said that, let me give you this caveat. You never correct a senior manager on their hygiene or on their apparel. You don't guide a peer other than to gently nudge them like, Tom, it's great, but whoa, bring it down a notch. Or Mary, love it, but woo, just a little bit less would go a long way. So you're gently nudging your peers. You never correct senior managers. And then etiquette for direct reports, again, private one-on-one. You can coach them. Let me just give you some coaching, John. Your cologne is just a little overpowering, so bring that back. So again, depends on your role, but you're going to have to don't just think it's going to go away. I've had this come up in numerous settings. It happens all the time. Sometimes you just have to kind of say it. People will appreciate it later. They don't want to know that they're stinking to the others in the workplace. I think time for one more question.
Yeah.
Okay.
One more here. What do I do when asked out to lunch by someone in upper management? Do I offer to pay or just assume he or she will get the bill?
It's a great question. I think it's safe to assume that senior managers, if they ask you to lunch, will pick up the tab. But you always want to be prepared. because I personally had the occasion of working for someone who invited me to lunch and then did not pick up the tab. I ended up having to pick up the tab, and so that was kind of a strange, exception to the rule. Senior management, for the most part, etiquette suggests that they should do that. Just be prepared that they may not do that. If peers ask you out, or even if other upper management ask you out and you're really not sure about the culture, you can always be honest and say, that is such a kind offer, thank you. I did not come today prepared to go out to lunch. I left my cash at home, and maybe we should just pick another time. And that's an invitation for the other person to say, oh my gosh, no, 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 I perfectly meant to pick up the tab. No, you're my guest, come to lunch. And so that's an easy way of getting, someone to say, here's what I intended, when you may not know what the general rule is. So I'm looking at the clock and I want to make sure we get out on time. I'm not aware of another question that we have. Offline. Are there, okay? There's some offline questions. Well, we'll get to those offline questions offline. And let me just use this moment to say thank you so much for joining me. This was great. We're going to archive this. You'll be able to find it for Life Collaborative, also for the MedTech and Biotech Veterans Program. And send those questions in. You can send anything to info@lifecollaborative.com. And I would be more than happy, along with our great team here, to be able to respond to any questions you have. Other than that, finish out your summer. Have a great one. Thanks again for joining me. It's been a pleasure.